Did he feel that very few people really understood synchronicity?
Yes. As Jung once said about certain groups, they have given up Jungian psychology and they have taken to prestige psychology. And that's the end.
I have a devil of a time with it. I don't really.
It's hellishly difficult.
Yeah.
Terribly difficult. It's so tricky because it's very easy, seemingly. You have to only slip back into primitive magical thinking. You know, all our conversation about imps being in the machine and so on. If you formulate it that way, like primitives saying there are imps in the machine and now look here, the jet plane is just coming when I'm saying that and so on. You can just regress into magical thinking. And magical thinking is at the bottom of us all because it's the old way humanity always thought. But that's regression. The difficulty is to go forwards beyond causality in the strict scientific work, beyond the modern concept of causality, which is probability, and to really define it severely and strictly without rejecting all what modern physics has found out and place it in there. That's the difficulty. To live with synchronicity, to joke about it, to watch it is very easy. You must only let the primitive man come up in you, and he does it at once. He understands synchronicity like anything. Or Chinese people or Japanese people, they understand synchronicity like that. And once Miyuki told me after a lecture I had, on synchronicity, thank you for explaining synchronicity, because for the first time I've understood causality. You know, I have always, when you spoke about causality in the West, I thought it was synchronicity. And now by you making the difference, I've seen that I've misunderstood it. And synchronicity to me is self-evident. I understand self-evidently. The causality was what I missed out. And by you contrasting the two, you have for the first time taught me causality. But that's the difficult. And you see, Jung always thought, since he knew the I Ching, he meditated on synchronicity. But he said the difficulty of writing the paper on synchronicity is to make it palatable for modern physics and for the modern sciences.
What do you, in your book, you talk about two aspects, and I'm trying to understand it. Acausal orderedness and creation in time.
Yes. That is not, I'm not talking about that. That's in the end of Jung's synchronicity paper. There he says, acausal orderedness is a just so order which has no cause. That would be, for instance, radioactive decay. You cannot say why it takes so and so much time for uranium to halve into lead. You can only say that's a just so story. It is so. It's an exact law. It's a law of nature. We can go on it. We can even date things according to it. But why it is that and not another number, we don't know. That is acausal orderedness. Now that is not synchronicity. That's everywhere. Acausal orderedness is a widespread appearance in nature. And the same in the mind. For instance, 6 is a number where you can add 1, 2, 3 and you get 6, or you can multiply 1 times 2 times 3 and you get 6. It's the only number where you can do that. Now, if you say why, you can't give a cause. You can only say it is obviously so. Our mind functions so. Even the greatest idiot will have to admit it is so. Because our mind is structured to believe it is so. But we can't give a cause. We can't explain it further. So there is acausal orderedness in the mind, in the psyche, of which numbers are the natural numbers are beautiful examples, and there's acausal orderedness in physics, and those would be all certain numerical laws. Or for instance, why is the light speed that much and not more or less? You can only say that light speed is that speed. You cannot say why. So that is Acausal orderedness. Now, synchronicity would be the same thing, but a creation in time, that something new happens in time. Well, let's say, let's invent a synchronistic event. Let's say I am going to a shop and I choose a blue frock, and I have some changes made and they should send it next week. I lose in the meantime a near relative and when the box arrived, it's a black frock. Now, that's a synchronicity. It suits the theme of death, and that I get by mistake a black frock instead of a blue frock. That's a so-called synchronistic event. Something which is purely in my inside, that I'm hit by the death of somebody, also appears in the outer world in this era of getting a black frock. That the death hasn't caused the saleswoman to send me a black frock. There's no causal connection. It's just a synchronicity. That has been created on the spot, so to speak, that event. That's not a regular event. You don't, every time you lose, your relatives get black things sent to you by mistake. You see? Mm-hmm. That's a unique event, which will not repeat itself, very likely. So there, magical thinking would say a ghost made it, or God made it. Mm-hmm. And then it's very simple. Magical thinking explains it quite clearly. Mm-hmm. Fate did it. But if you don't think in magical causality, fate did it, God did it, an imp did it, when you really try, then you say it is an act of creation in time. Now, I think if you read that book of Fritjof Capra, The Tao of Physics, there he explains the S matrix, and there he gives there are 4 laws: the unchangeability of the position of the observer, the quantum mechanical relativity, causality, and the 4th, singularities. And by singularities, he means the creation of new particles, which is unpredictable, completely unpredictable. That would be an analogy to the idea of synchronicity. And it also breaks through causality, because you can, with the laws of the calcul of probability, you can predict everything else, but you cannot predict the creation of a new particle. When and how it will happen, you cannot predict. You cannot even within probability predict it. So that would be what the physicists call singularities, and synchronistic events are, in a way, like singularities.
Is birth of a creature, of a human being?
You see, it's very difficult, because most events are both. You can look at them from the causal standpoint, namely that a male and a female mated, and it was the right day of the month, and so on, and that's the cause of your birth. And there's a causal chain explaining why you came into this world. But you can also take it as a synchronicity. That's what astrology does, and say that a certain world moment, typical world moment, you sprang into existence as a singularity. And your singularity is expressed in the quality of that astrological moment. That will be the astrological or synchronistic explanation of birth. But what is so difficult is that most events you can simply look at from both angles. You can either explain them causally or other. You have both views. But Jung's difficulty in his paper was, therefore, to find cases where the causal explanation is excluded, where causal explanation is out. And that is the best in telepathic future dreams. For instance, if somebody dreams ahead an earthquake, then you can say the dream has certainly not caused the earthquake, and the earthquake hasn't caused the dream because at the time where the dream happened, the earthquake hadn't happened yet. There is a moment where it excludes causality. You cannot explain it causally. You can say one can explain it causally or synchronicity. Mm-hmm. That's why he had great trouble to find the few examples we have where it really they exclude each other, the two explanations, to make his point. But something like birth, you can simply look from both angles. You can explain it causally or synchronistically.
Telepathic dreams are not that uncommon. I mean,
they are very common, yes. And they always strike people as meaningful, or even when they are seemingly meaningless. This first case I was speaking just before about, she had once a dream simply that she heard certain numbers said. And the next day she opened the paper and an airplane of her country had crashed and on it had those numbers. And I could not see the symbolic meaning of that. It was a synchronicity or a telepathic thing, if you want, but I couldn't see any meaning in it. And Jung said that might have only just had the meaning to convince her of the reality of the psyche, and actually it did. From then on, she began to take her dreams more seriously. Before, she looked at me, with a doubtful eye, kind of, you talk, but I don't believe it. But that impressed her. So probably the unconscious just arranged that to show her, I know everything. I know even the number of an airplane crashing in somewhere in another country, if I want to. That impressed her.